Okay. Hello, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the conversation. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. This is a lunch and learn, so continue to eat. Don't worry about us. My name is Wade McCarthy. I'm the paid media manager for Travel Oregon. And I've invited my friend Justin Gibbs from Miles Partnership. Full disclosure, we have worked together on the SEO for Travel Oregon, and it has been quite successful. And I also saw this presentation at Marketing Outlook Forum, so I know it's good. So I'm very happy and pleased to announce that Justin is here to give us insights on trends and real-world lessons around AI. And unfortunately, Justin does have to get to a flight immediately after this. You'll see him running out the door. But as this is a lunch and learn, we'll continue to collaborate with questions and answers and input from the floor. How are you using AI? So I think that we'll all continually learn through this lunch and learn. With that, I present to you Justin Gibb.
All right, thank you, Wade. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for choosing my session. I know you had a few options, so that always makes me feel good. I will step away from the speaker here. So we're going to look at some trends, how AI has been impacting travel. It has had a pretty major impact on a lot of our websites. I'm curious, show of hands, to see who's seen declines in their own organic search traffic over the last couple years. Maybe not as many hands as I expected, but if you are working at a DMO, you've probably seen quite a bit. And I'm just going to not rush through some of these, but I'm not going to dwell on some of these title slides. So we're going to do a quick level set here. And I do want to ask you, while you all have your mouths full of food, what makes something intelligent? Not artificially intelligent, just intelligent. Information, thoughtful, authenticity, decisionable, factual. All right. We got a lot of hands, that's great. I'll do one more. Adaptable. I actually like that answer the best. I don't have an answer for you. Amongst experts, this clicker, okay. So when we look at artificial intelligence, the definition of that is not even widely agreed upon amongst the experts who work on AI. It is very much an umbrella term, and it encapsulates a lot of different fields and a lot of different technologies. And so things like natural language processing, machine learning, neural networks, those are all in this AI umbrella. And we've been using things that do kind of fall into that umbrella for a long time now, much longer than you may have expected, because really AI has only seemingly come into our lives in the last 3-4 years or so. But things like spell check, autocorrect, text prediction, any sort of like recommendation engine that you have on Spotify or Netflix or any sort of streaming platform. Reverse image search, which Google has had in their platform for a very long time. All of that uses technology that is considered to be AI. And a lot of that has been in our lives for much longer than we've had access to things like ChatGPT. So AI has kind of been in the background for a while now. But again, a lot of experts don't agree. A lot of folks think that it's not AI until we get to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, while a lot of these other smaller technologies can still be considered AI. And I just think that's important to kind of level set with when we talk about what this thing is, because the natural question is, now what do I do with it? And it's probably a lot of different things. I also think it's kind of important to establish the difference between something that is a deterministic approach and something that is probabilistic. Is everybody familiar with these terms? Can you raise your hand if you've heard this before, or if it's a handful of people, not a ton? Okay, so something that's deterministic is something that is more rule-based, something that is much more rigid, like a calculator, right? If I say 1 + 1, I get 2 every single time. And most traditional computing systems are deterministic. They rely on an algorithm, which is a set of rules, and basically you put in an input and you get that same output every single time. AI, for the most part, is probabilistic, meaning that I can put in the same input 10 times and get 10 different outputs. They might be very similar, but if we all ask ChatGPT right now the same question, we will at least get some variation of that output. It will not be exactly the same every single time. And there are pros and cons of each of these things. Deterministic approaches are a lot more auditable and a lot more predictable, right? And so if there is a function that I'm working on and it needs to be accurate every single time, let's say I'm working with financials, I don't really have room for AI to hallucinate or to only be correct 90% of the time. I might want to use a more deterministic approach and not jump into thinking about how AI can help me there. But things that have a lot more nuance to them, things that are more ambiguous, things that do not have to be 100% every single time, those can use a probabilistic approach or something that might rely on artificial intelligence. And so I think that that's important because as we use AI, one of the things and I'll get this at the very, very end, one of the things I've been really using AI for is to actually vibe code, right? I'm using artificial intelligence to build deterministic tools that allow me to manage things in a very structured way, where in the past I may have had to rely on a third-party tool that I had to subscribe to, or I had to piecemeal different tools together to get that dashboard. Now I can actually build exactly what custom tool I need, and it's still deterministic. I'm not always using AI, but I'm using AI to get to that point. And that's been extremely powerful. I think it's important to know here also that AI does not know the answers. It predicts what's going to come next based on statistics and patterns and probability. And so when we think about how traditional data is stored on the internet, it looks more like this table on the left. That would be a more traditional database. You have columns and rows and labels, and it's very easy to look up records and find the exact same record every single time. Data in artificial intelligence is stored in a much more complicated and confusing way, and it's stored in a neural network. And so you might see some version of this neural network that looks maybe more like this, and it looks cool, but where is the actual information being stored? I'll skip ahead here to that one. So when you store that, it's stored in something called a vector embedding, and it looks a lot like that. And so it looks a lot more like coordinates, right? The data is not just whatever term you have in a bunch of records. It is stored as these vector embeddings. So there's no way you can actually go in and see, did AI copy my text? Did it read my website and store all of my information? Is it trying to steal from me? Probably, but this is how it's stored. And so this is one of the ways that these big tech firms kind of get away with stealing the data, is that they haven't copied it verbatim, they've compressed it into these vector embeddings, and they save it this way. And so this makes it a lot more difficult to understand, and I think even amongst the experts, again, they can't tell you exactly where a thing is happening inside an LLM or inside an AI model because it looks like that. They can't just go in and open it up and find the information. All right, so the race to 100 million users, maybe you know where this is going, but it took 75 years for the telephone to get to 100 million people. It took 16 years for the mobile phone, 9 months for TikTok, and only 2 months for ChatGPT, making it the fastest growing technology or platform of all time. 2 months from basically the release of public ChatGPT, 100 million people had already adopted it, including myself at that time. Most AI is being developed, at least most AI that we will all have access to, is being developed by 5 different frontier labs. They are always in the news, so you've probably hear about them all the time. OpenAI being the biggest, or the most popular at least. Google, Anthropic, Meta, and xAI are a couple of the others. Recently, Anthropic was in the news because the Department of War was really trying to stronghold them, I think last week, into allowing them to have access to Claude with the guardrails removed. So basically, let us do whatever we want with this model without the predetermined guardrails that the rest of the population has. And I'm happy to say that their CEO actually did not give in. However, ChatGPT, Sam Altman at ChatGPT and OpenAI did give in. This actually created a very large rate of uninstallations of ChatGPT on people's phones, and then a lot of people moved over to Claude and installed it. Will that last forever? Who knows? They'll probably get strong-armed some other way, but for now, Claude has not been compromised in that way. Prior to that happening, a lot of these graphics I'm going to show you have hallucinations in them, and I left it that way and I generated that way on purpose. I didn't ask for them, but I also did not iterate on them in order to get a clean output. And so when we look at the market share from last year, OpenAI had 47% of the market share. I know it's probably hard to see from back there, but it actually shows that there's a 37% next to it. That number is incorrect. I was using the Beautify This Slide tool in Google Slides, which uses their Nano Banano technology. I use that for a lot of these for the sake of kind of showing you guys, I guess like the iterations that it takes, sort of the imperfection that you get out of using a lot of these, because while it's extremely useful a lot of times, if I'm just sitting here asking it to fix the slide over and over, it wastes a lot of my time. So a lot of times when I do these, I get asked, if I put a chatbot on my website, does that automatically feed my content into OpenAI or into ChatGPT? Does me having this bot then make all my content included in a large language model? And the answer to that is no. When you put a chatbot on your website, you are using your own like sandboxed version of like whatever AI chatbot you're using. It is not going to train ChatGPT about you. It would be really dangerous if that were the case, right? Because then anybody can go in, have conversations with it, and essentially poison these models because their interactions would then train it. And so there's a lot of guardrails that are put in place, but no, your content on your website is probably being accessed, but the chatbot itself is not training the greater model there. So that's just something that I've been asked in the past. All right, so let's get into tourism a little bit more specifically here and look at the state of DMO traffic. We have seen a massive decrease in traffic to both our DMO websites and a good amount to our hospitality websites that we manage at Miles Partnership. With the destinations and the DMO sites largely being inspiration-based, we rank for a lot of those things to do, very inspirational keywords. Those are the terms that Google's AI overview does a really good job answering. And so we have lost a considerable amount of traffic. And I think as DMOs, a lot of times that like those session counts are one of our primary KPIs. And so it's been really fun as the person who is responsible for organic search traffic to have the same conversation every single week, week after week for the last year and a half about why everyone's traffic is down so much. For hospitality and attractions, though, we've actually seen a little bit of a different challenge here. A lot of the hospitality websites, most of them, use some sort of booking engine, and those booking engines are primarily driven by JavaScript. The bots, or the user agents that scrape content on a website, have a very difficult time accessing JavaScript-heavy sites. And so when all of your rates and your availability and all of those details that someone with a booking engine might be relying on, isn't accessible, then those bots get the information from somewhere else. So if you are a hospitality business and you're not working with an OTA, the OTAs are really good at flattening it and turning it all into scrapable HTML. But if you're a smaller business, you might not have resources to do that. And if you're not working with an OTA, it's still going to find the data somewhere or it's going to make it up. And so I've seen a lot of I guess we can call it hallucinations, but just a lot of misinformation about our hospitality brands when they do not have a crawlable booking engine or when they're not working with big OTAs. And so, like for one of the cases I was looking at, I was looking for a hotel on, it was like in the Florida Panhandle, and the hotel that I found was expressing that, or ChatGPT was expressing that their rate was $250 a night and that they were a 5-star resort. And it cited a resource, which was a website that you'd never heard of before. It was like some, I don't know, it was a scraper, like bot website, something that nobody actually books through. Well, when you went to their actual website, the star rating was, there was a 5-star website, or a 5-star business. The rate was $500 a night. ChatGPT was showing $250 a night and a 2-star resort. That delta in information would turn me away immediately. That's $500 a night is not in my budget, but at that time, $250 was. And so when you have that information misrepresented all over the place, you know, again, for a lot of small businesses, that becomes a real issue. These are kind of hard to see. But on the left, we have miles partnership data, and on the right, we have SimpleView. SimpleView actually is a great data and insights portal. They have a collection or portfolio of over 400 destination websites in their portfolio. So if you want to look at SimpleView's travel and insights dashboard, it's a great resource to see how our industry is kind of faring right now, and it'll show the organic search traffic. I have the same type of dashboard for miles, and you can see a lot of the trends and spikes are in the same places. We have just over 100 websites in our portfolio, so combined we're looking at about 550 websites, I believe. Both organizations showed a 25% decrease in organic search traffic in 2025 over the previous year. And so here I am, hopeful, thinking, well, 2026, we'll go into 2026 and maybe we'll maybe not recover, but maybe at least traffic will be flat, and that has not been the case. It's going to be really hard for you guys to see, but we are coming in even lower in 2026, which is like the tiny little line on the left there, for both organizations, because Google continues to increase the presence rate of those AI overviews that they use in search. At the same time, TripTease actually did a study for with all of their hotel websites in their collection, and last year they were seeing a 33% decline. I'm not seeing that level of decline on our hospitality websites, but they certainly have a larger portfolio that they were looking at. So I think it's safe to say that like travel is down in traffic by a very substantial amount. Right, and that is again because of these AI overviews. So I might ask for things to do in Portland or things to do in Santa Fe. And this is the response I get. You do get citations on the right, but if people are already getting that answer right away, they don't need to go to your website. And so this is like a big, kind of a big challenge that we've had to solve, because this has been a primary KPI for so many sites over the last year, or actually over the whole time I've been working at Miles, the last 10 years. So last year, for most of the year, Ahrefs, they do this study, and they were trying to record, or they were trying to understand like what the click-through rate drop was when AI overviews were present. And last year, they were reporting a 34.5%. Now, Google is always saying the contrary. No, this is a better user experience. We really like this. But Ahrefs is a very, or a highly trusted resource in the SEO space. They reported a 34.5%. They redid this study in February, and it had jumped to 58%. So 58% click-through rate drop for all of the results that are in like the top 3 positions in Google search. That's massive. So they have, Google has created a massive disruption here in our traffic. But I saw this the other day from SparkToro. If you ever follow SparkToro, Rand Fishkin, he founded Moz way back in the day and has always been a great voice for SEO, or in the SEO world. And he is citing that like search isn't really just a channel, it's a behavior, right? And it happens in a lot of places. It was long cited that Google was responsible for 90% of the entire market share in search, and that everyone else accounted for the remaining 10% collectively. and they redid their study, and he's showing that Google's actually responsible for 73% because people search in places that you might not consider a search engine. And so coming in second place was actually Amazon. More people search in Amazon than they do in Bing, which is kind of funny. But we have Amazon, Bing, ChatGPT, DuckDuckGo. Collectively, all of these still add up to, what's that, 17, 18 point, no, about 17%. But it's a behavior, right? And so if you have a website and you want to improve user behavior on your website, incorporating semantic search on your site rather than keyword-based search actually gives people what they want a lot more than regular keyword search, which really struggles because it's Boolean and it's deterministic. This is a study from BrightEdge, and so they were measuring the presence. Their studies were kind of funny because they wouldn't always include the previous years, but they're looking at the presence of AI overviews across different industries. And so this isn't the click-through rate, but this is what impacts that click-through rate. Healthcare and B2B tech really saw early adoption. I don't know if adoption's the right word, but those were the industries that were affected early on. I don't know, I kind of paused there because healthcare and AI overviews, I wouldn't personally get my healthcare advice from ChatGPT or AI overviews, but this was like one of the first industries to see, such huge presence of those overviews. And then of course we saw a lot of content in the last couple of years about Google recommending that people eat rocks for stomach aches and put glue on their pizza and some really wild misinformation or hallucinations that were published. So don't get your healthcare information from Google. Travel information makes a lot of sense though, right? If we're going for inspiration, I'm looking for things to do, that actually is a good place to get travel information. It's got all the images already. And so it jumped to nearly 50%. We just weren't impacted that first year. You can see there's actually one bar that doesn't exist. We had very little presence that first year. And so a lot of these sites were impacted in 2024, where the DMO space really didn't get hit until late 2024 and primarily in 2025, which is why we're having this conversation now and not 2 years ago. All right, so to pivot on that a little bit, we wanted to look and see who or what websites are being used primarily as resources across all the large language models. And so what I do is I have this platform called Scrunch, and we set up a collection of prompts that are relevant to each destination that we have tracking in Scrunch. It runs those prompts through up to 7 different large language models, and it measures where your website shows up, if it shows up, what the sentiment is, if you're being recommended, right? So if I'm looking for a great coastal vacation, is Oregon being recommended at the top of that list, right? That's something that we want to at least try and have some influence on. So I took this data from all of our sites that we have running in Scrunch, and I stripped out all of the destination-specific websites because I wanted to know nationally what websites had the greatest impact. And we can see that TripAdvisor by far is the most present website when it comes to travel and tourism in LLMs. That's probably not a big surprise. I think the surprise to me here was how big that margin was. But if you are trying to understand, how you can impact your visibility or your brand sentiment in large language models, TripAdvisor forums are a great place to look. The public can contribute to them, right? And so you have this third-party contribution that gives it a lot of trust. TripAdvisor, also big website, a lot of trust there. So look there, look at those forums, look at those brand pages that you have on TripAdvisor. Then, in case you can't see them all, I'll just read some off. We have Wikipedia, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit, Expedia, and the National Park Service, amongst a bunch of other sites here. So that's really who's getting cited the most often in travel right now. And if you want to, again, kind of think about how your destination is being represented, these are the places that I would look. So how do you add AI to your organization? That's tough because everyone's trying to figure that out right now. But when electricity was first discovered, naturally the first thing that happened is that gas lamps in factories were replaced with light bulbs. And that had a lot of great benefits to it, right? Light bulbs were brighter than gas lamps, but more so, they were a lot safer than gas lamps. And so we reduced the amount of fires that we had in factories. And that on its own was huge, right? But that's not what really fed that like the Industrial Revolution. It was the creation of the electric motor. That is what really sparked that revolution at that time. And so if you're thinking about how do I use AI, and you all tell me that it's to respond to emails, that's your light bulb. Think about how you can build systems with it, right? And those systems can be a combination of deterministic tools and probabilistic tools, but you want to build some sort of motor or an engine, not just a light bulb. That's where you're really going to find that growth. This is just something we always have on all of our AI slides, but it's not really this technology problem, right? And if you're asking, well, what vendor should I use? I'm not going to answer that. There's too many. I don't know. I don't know what you need exactly. Or like, where do I put AI? I don't know what's going to help you. But at the end of this, I'm going to show you what I've been doing and how it's really helped me and some of the cool tools I've been building. And so hopefully that can inspire you into thinking about like what you can do in your organization or for some of your own personal use cases, because I've found a lot of great personal use cases with this too. Here is a list of a ton of other AI models, generative AI models. This is just a small sample. There's no world that I have time to evaluate every single tool, and neither do you. So one of my recommendations is to really be careful about what's advertised to you around AI, just like you would with any other product. We're kind of, in the last several years, we've been in this mode where everybody's just recommending all of these AI tools. You see all of these advertisements for things that are like hyper-specific, when a lot of times like those frontier models do the same thing. And a lot of these tools likely actually use an API into the frontier model anyway. And so you might be buying like this layer that just uses ChatGPT in the first place. So be careful of that, because it's a great way for someone else to make money off of you if you're not fully understanding that product. When I evaluate new tools myself, I always ask them what model they use, and what frontier model they use. And if they tell me, I don't know, then they probably are using a frontier model, which means you don't have to use their tool. You can just go around them and do it on your own. But I've got that a lot from salespeople. I don't know. Well, somebody knows. And it's everywhere, right? Like Google and all of the big tech platforms are pushing it everywhere. So now it's in your email. So now I'm trying to move away from Gmail, because the only way that AI works in your email is if it reads all of your email, right? It's just like Alexa doesn't work unless it's always on, because how would it know that I said, hey, Alexa, unless it was listening? And it starts to sound a little conspiracy theory-like, right up until it's not. So I'm trying to move a lot of my personal stuff out of there. But like you go onto Facebook or you go onto Instagram and it's like, I'm just trying to search for a friend, and it's like, well, ask our AI anything. Like, no, I'm just trying to look for a friend. And so you end up with all the tech companies kind of forcing it on you everywhere. And I don't know, now we'll get into the opinion piece. I don't like that. So what are some challenges? The dead internet theory, can I get a show of hands of who's heard of this? Handful, 10 maybe. All right, so this is this idea that at some point the internet and basically all the comments and all the content on the web that you see is created by and then commented on by bots. And so you go into Reddit, you see some like shifty looking article posted, and then all the comments just kind of look a little bit off, and yet somehow it still sways your opinion. That has started to come to life. You can see that ChatGPT launched here in November 2022, and we were already seeing increases in bot-created content because we had a lot of content spinners out there, and just because ChatGPT was released to the public at that time, that doesn't mean that other folks didn't have access to other models. And so we had started to see some growth, but it ramped up immediately after ChatGPT launched. And at the end of 2024, that bot-created content officially crossed over with human content, and we're seeing more bot-created content online than human-created content. This does not look at 2025. Well, it just looks at like spring 2025. So I don't have like the follow-up to this data yet, but I think that it's pretty easy to assume that it's going to continue and just get worse from here. Now, fortunately, Google search, and a lot of the LLMs do tend to favor content that was written by humans here. So 80% or 86% of all the articles ranking in Google search were generated by humans, and only 14% were generated by AI. 82% of all the articles cited by ChatGPT and Perplexity were written by humans, with only 18% written by AI. So you're still getting a lot of the AI content incorporated, but for the most part, human-generated content seems to be favored. That is likely due to the fact that humans have the ability to express like true experience, right? Like the content that you all create, it's very nuanced. It shares your experiences, your point of view. It's very detailed. Chatbot created content turns out to be this like distillate, it's this like great average of all the things that people have written about, and thus it's just kind of blah. It's like very, very basic and average, and it doesn't rank as high. Now the giant asterisk with this chart is that the only way to measure this at scale is using AI. And so like you have to take it with a big grain of salt. I think it's safe to say that it's likely true. I think that those percentages, they're probably not going to be dead accurate, but it's likely still the majority that's created by humans. Okay, so then this one I hate, and I hate it because I see it every day. Well, until I started pulling myself off of YouTube. But more than 20% of YouTube's feed is now AI slop channels. And so I'll skip through that and just show you some of these AI slop channels. You might see some of this, I don't know, it's just it's either too sparkly or it kind of looks AI generated or what have you. I don't know, there's some weird stuff in this one. The highest earning AI slop channels generated a collective $33 million last year. So they are highly incentivized to do this. And you're gonna just see more and more of it as I don't know, I'm trying to, again, pull out of all of these Google products because I feel like it is just AI pushing more AI at me. But you see it all the time, and I think once you kind of get tuned on to what it looks like, you'll just see more and more. So be careful of that. There's no value to this other than that doom scrolly, it's a dopamine hit. It's kind of addictive to look at, but man, what a great way to waste your time and see, I don't know, pretty bad stuff. Now, I do feel like the word work slop turns a lot of people off of using AI, and I think that that's also dangerous. So you'll see these articles out there that say AI-generated work slop is destroying productivity. And to the point I was making earlier with my slides that I use the Beautify, that does kind of hurt my productivity, right? Where I normally could have just made a quick text box, I pull the graphic, takes me a couple minutes maybe. Every time I have to hit refresh and try it over and over and over to get a usable slide, that is my time that's being wasted using this Beautify tool. Now, luckily, part of my job is to get up here and start talking about AI, so for me, it's not as much of a waste, but for people who aren't doing this as part of their job, it's a giant waste of time, and I would probably recommend not spending all your time refreshing that image to try and iterate through and find one that works for you, because it does waste a lot of time. Now, again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be using it. You definitely should, but you're gonna have to find that balance in that workflow that works for you. So right now, only 5% of companies that have started implementing AI into their process have found these meaningful gains that either ramp up their productivity, make them more efficient, meaning the other 95 aren't really finding a lot out of it. Mostly it's individuals who are finding a lot of benefits from it, but as an organization, you're not finding these breakthroughs yet. I think that that's about to change, but this is the data we had from last year. So again, don't sleep on it, but if you feel like you're behind, so is everybody else. So I read this book over the holidays, and it's called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. And so he has the 4 rules for working with a co-intelligence, and that's what he calls AI, is a co-intelligence. And so I really liked his 4 rules here. And they are, always invite AI to the table. See, this uses the Nana Banana to try and make this funny image of a whatever AI baby. So always bring it to the table, right? Treat it as like your default collaborator. If you're working on a project and you want some idea, you're kind of looking for like a new angle or a new lens on things, put that problem into chat and just see what it says. The cost of asking it's very low, right? Like, just takes a second to type in your question, tell it what you're working on. And if you don't do it, you might miss out on a lot of good ideas. Because while it's not a database that stores information, being a neural network means that it is a connection machine. And so it may make connections that you wouldn't have because it does have likely more connections, or it likely has more context than you do because it's likely read more medical journals than we have, right? Or more engineering journals. A lot of different topics that we don't all look at day to day. So it's really good at helping with those additional connections. But you don't always know how it's going to help. It can surprise you in a lot of ways. I was saying be the human in the loop right until I saw Christian's presentation earlier, and now I'm saying be the meat in the loop. And this is super important. So it can give us the feeling like we can manage projects outside of our own domain. And that can be really dangerous, right? And so you need to use it for things that you understand enough where you know that it's kind of BSing an answer. And that's super important because you could start asking it like engineering questions and like, I don't know, how do I do this thing on my car? And then all of a sudden your wheels fall off because it told you the wrong torque spec. And if you're not a mechanic, you don't know what that is. And so try and keep your usage somewhat in your own domain so that you can at least be that human in the loop. Treating AI like a person, I think a lot of people know that already, but when you, instead of just asking a question directly, say, you are an expert in destination marketing, you've been doing it for this long, you work in this destination, you give it a lot of additional context. The average conversation with ChatGPT is 86 words long, where the average search in Google is like 3.5 words. When I'm building tools, I'm sending it thousands of words. More context, more content gives you much, much better answers. And because I'm the human in the loop, I knew that when I asked ChatGPT to give me bullets about this book for the presentation, that number 4 was not right. It's probably also true, right? It probably will change your job. That is not point 4 from the book. Point 4 from the book is to assume that this is the worst AI you will ever use. And I can probably argue both directions. It is extremely powerful right now. However, who's heard of this term enshittification? This is my favorite new thing. All right, just a small handful. Cory Doctorow, he's like my favorite person to follow right now. So he came up with this word enshittification back in 2002. And then the American Dialect Society actually coined it as the word of the year in 2023. And so it's kind of been well spread since then. But it's the idea that an organization creates a lot of value, and then they start extracting more value from their users. And once they've extracted as much from the users as possible, they turn around and they extract as much as they can from their business clients. And so you see this with Google already, right? Google, they had the search engine. It was the best search engine ever made. And then they introduced ads, and those ads were fairly well labeled, and people avoided them. They did not click on them because they knew people were paying to be in those placements, and they weren't likely the best answers. And so what they had done was basically turned themselves into a steaming turd. In 2018, well, it was like 2018 to 2020, we started to see this trend where people started searching Reddit at the end of their search terms, because what they were finding is that the search results in Google weren't as good as they used to be, right? And that became this, if you were watching all of this via your search engine tools, you actually saw and Reddit, plus Reddit at the end, it started to increase quite a bit. And that's when the public started kind of losing trust. Well, what had happened is in 2018, this was all kind of discovered during their Department of Justice case, their monopoly case. They had filed what they call it, a red flag alert, and they said, we are not hitting our revenue goals. They had made the search engine too good. People were not clicking on ads, and their Google Ads business was not hitting their goals. And so the McKinsey guys who really managed the top of Google, they went to a man named Ben Gomes, he was the head of search at that time, and they said, hey, we got a real problem here. We're not hitting our ad goal right now, and our revenue isn't really pacing. We need to do something. And so all of those algorithm updates that Google had been doing for probably about 20 years at that point, just about, they turned them back. They intentionally rolled back algorithm updates to make the search engine worse so that people would have to click on more results and thus they would make more money in their ad, or more ad revenue, right? They purposely shitified their own product to make more money. And so you're in this world where they've made the search results worse and the cost per click continues to go up for the business users. They are turning it into this graphic here. And so we can play a game, who can spot the Google ad, right? This was the same search, I just took one screenshot of the ad and one of the organic result. Well, I won't make you guess. It's the one, it was actually the one at the top here. So the one at the bottom, that's the Google ad, right? It used to be a gray box, and then they took the gray box away. It used to have a little tag next to it that said ad, and they changed the colors on that a bunch of times. Now there's just one heading at the top that says sponsored results, and man, if they don't blend in so well with the organic results, they don't want you to know the difference. They want you to click those ads. And so I bring that up because when we say that we should assume that it's the worst AI that we've ever used, we can also assume that eventually these platforms, ChatGPT, will eventually inshitify itself. Enter ChatGPT ads. They announced it earlier this year, and they're being sold on a CPM model. They're very high CPMs, and at the moment, it is separate from the response. And so you have this like sponsored response at the bottom. This is for free tier users, and it's not like integrated with the answer. But they are in a massive amount of debt. None of these platforms are profitable. They've just been taking, billions of dollars in loans, and they're all in the hole. So I don't know, I won't be surprised if in a short amount of time we start seeing sponsored placements inside of these GPT responses, right? And there's nothing less intelligent than me paying for a placement inside of an AI response. And so, I don't know, I'm kind of back and forth on that one. So with that, I have more warnings. Is anybody familiar with the term the expert halo? Okay, we got one hand I saw. This is a cognitive bias that we apply to people that we see as experts. So I learned this concept when I was in backcountry. It was like an avalanche training, right? When I got my ARI 1 cert. And what happens is I say, okay, well, so-and-so, they're the backcountry expert. We're not gonna ask any questions, and I'm not gonna put any more thought into this. I'm just gonna follow them blindly wherever they take us, because they are the expert. And that's what we do with AI, right? Everybody asks it a question, and then they just kind of take it. They assume that that's the correct response. And 9 times out of 10, it might be. But it's very, very dangerous. In 2017, I took a trip to Havasupai. We all heard of Havasupai in the Grand Canyon. It's like one of the more beautiful hikes I've been on in a canyon. And I blindly trusted Google Maps. And so did everyone else in this ledger, apparently. And so when you go to Havasupai from Denver, you gotta take this, it seems like a roundabout way. You gotta go down through Flagstaff, and then you gotta go out through Peach Springs and then back up. But when I followed Google Maps, it took us the quickest route, perceived quickest route through the national park system. And it's a canyon, right? A lot like all the water here, you can't just go straight through it. There's a long way around. And so we're following it. And we're in my girlfriend at the time sedan, and it had been dumping rain the entire trip. So we follow it off-road, and I'm like, well, it's a very remote location. Just keep going. Yeah, it's remote. Of course we're on a dirt road. Didn't think about it, and Google told me to go there. And it set us back, I think, 4 to 5 hours on our trip. So eventually we'd been driving for an hour or so, and we get to a private hunting ground. It was the Diamond Day Ranch, I think is what it was called. And we find this sign in Ledger for the hunting ground, and this is what it's full of. Not hunters signing in to go hunting. It's people who say, don't go, idiots, stop, fuck Google. This is 2 images. I mean, it was an entire ledger full of this. It was like a living nightmare, right? Because we're in the sedan, I can't turn around, it's so muddy. And so we're just like out of the car, I'm like feeling the depths of these little puddles to make sure that we're not gonna sink into it. We're like cleaning the mud off with our hands. It was really terrible, and I'd just about given up. And my brother gets service somehow from my cousin, who's like, yo, you're on the right way. I've seen that sign before too. No, she hadn't. She saw another version of that sign that was in the correct spot because the hunting grounds were quite large. So eventually we get service, or like map service, right? And we kind of follow it out of there. And the road is right here between me and this wall. And it's a stockade for this person's like cattle. And so we drove our car through their stockade, and I opened their gate. Like I thought we were gonna get shot, right? We open up their gate at like 3 in the morning and get out of there. But it was a real nightmare. So we had to go back the next year. My mom saw our pictures. She thought it was the most beautiful thing. You know, she really wanted to go. So we go back, and 2 weeks before we go, on the news in Arizona, this woman did the same exact thing, except her Suburban ran out of gasoline, and she got stuck for 7 days by herself. She ate all of her, luckily she was prepared to go camping, so she had all sorts of food and water. But she ended up on, day 7, she runs out of food. She walks out to the main road, and they have to call Flight for Life for her. She was in such rough shape. She followed Google, just like we did, gave it that expert halo, and she almost died. And so, like, think about that. Whenever you take a response from ChatGPT, like, a lot of it's probably inconsequential, but if you don't torque those bolts down right on your tires or whatever you're doing, you got to make sure you work within your domain of knowledge so you can still be that human in the loop. I saw this article the other day on VentureBeat, and it was saying, well, the real risk of AI is not deep fakes, it's the whispers that it gives you. It's all of these little tiny pieces of feedback you get over time that influences your understanding of the world and your understanding of this topic. And I think that that's a good, I kind of liked that article because a lot of things are blatantly wrong, but a lot of things are just so slightly off, and they can kind of influence your belief in the world. Does anybody have any Meta AI glasses or any smart glasses? Good. So this one was quite disturbing. This was just from March 2nd, and I believe it was in Nairobi. They have a lot of the big tech companies have people doing data labeling, they call it, and they usually work in Africa. There's a lot of different African countries that have these centers where people do data labeling. And so in Nairobi they had one, and one of the employees there kind of flagged hey, I'm getting all of these people's private videos from the Meta AI glasses, and sometimes it's them going to the bathroom, sometimes it's them changing, sometimes it's a little bit more explicit than that. People are inadvertently recording themselves with these AI glasses, and Meta really wants to sell them to you. They want to see every little detail in your life. And that's terrifying to me, right? Because I don't have to own them to be in your video. Somebody could be recording me right now. So, away from the doom and gloom for a second. I got about 15 minutes left. How do we use AI at Miles? Because there's a lot of great stuff. I just have to set a warning also. Custom GPTs are awesome. So there's a lot of things that I do that might require some sort of code. In the screenshot here, we have a query that I use in our brand listening platform. And it's not a big deal to write the query, but it is a little bit more tedious. I have to wrap it in brackets. I have to use this C hyphen little bit of text there. And it just has to be the context or the syntax has to be correct for this to work. And so it's just kind of tedious. Well, I created a custom GPT where I just input the raw information and it wraps it all in this query for me so I don't have to do that. That has saved me a lot of time, but also eliminated a lot of human error from me doing it and then oh, I missed, I forgot to use a comma there, or maybe I used a semicolon on accident. And so little things like that can be a huge help. We have implemented what's known as semantic search on a lot of the websites that we build. So rather than Boolean search, which is let's say I search for pet friendly, if an article is about a dog park, but it doesn't say pet friendly, old Boolean search wouldn't pick it up because that word didn't exist. But with semantic search, I know that a dog park is a pet-friendly place. Or, maybe you have a pet possum, like whatever it is, right? It knows, due to the probabilistic nature of semantic search, that when you search for something, even if the exact term doesn't exist, that there's a high likelihood that that content is about that thing. And so this has made the user engagement on our websites much improved, just because it's easier for people to get what they want. And then we started doing a lot of internal tooling. So, like with my first example, I've built out tons of these internal tools in what is known as a Google Colab notebook. This is all Python script, and you still have to run it through this CLI. Like, I'm still running it in a coding platform, right? And so it still has a little bit of friction, I guess, if you are an average user and you're not into coding and it's a little bit complicated. But for me, this made a huge difference. I was able to interact with a lot of APIs and do a lot of things a lot faster than I would have previously. And so one thing I wanted to do was I want to build myself a website. So one Saturday morning, I sat there. Let's just do a little bit of personal self-promotion here. Saturday morning, I was like, I bet I can have Claude Code build me a website. And I sat and I said, please do all the research about me that you can. I'm the Justin Gibbs who's in Denver and I work for Miles. Tell me everything you know about me. And I took all that data and I put it into Claude Code, and I said, build me a website. I want you to use, what did I say, like the Tailwind CSS framework. I know some of these frameworks, so it made it a little easier. If you don't, it'll recommend them for you, and it does it on its own. And it built me this website, like in one shot. All I did is I took the files and I uploaded it to my own server, and I have this website now. Right, and it was just so much cleaner. It didn't get the margins on the image quite right, but it looks really good for the amount of time I spent on this. So if you want your own personal portfolio website, go for it. I've been building this vibe check tool that we thought was kind of fun. So social listening or brand listening for destinations is very noisy because you have all sorts of news, you have all sorts of tweets and Facebook comments and stuff, and a lot of it's not about tourism. So how do I distill out the content that's posted online only when it is related to tourism? I had been using mention.com for a couple years already to harvest that content, but it's really a pain to parse through. And so using Claude Code, I actually built this dashboard. I kind of iterate on this. This is just locally stored on my computer, but I was able to build this. It came up with a tourism relevance score. An article might be about traffic, but it can still impact tourism, right? If it's just about TSA, that's more obvious, but if it's about I-70 traffic in Denver, I mean, that'll ruin your trip pretty quick if you're stuck on I-70 for 8 hours, and that happens quite frequently. And so it gives you a nice breakdown of what's driving tourism to your destination. This is definitely a work in progress, but this allowed me to take this massive amount of unstructured data and make it a lot more meaningful. It shows me down below, there's lists of articles, there's pain points, there's things that happened yesterday. And so this is a really fun project I've been working on. I have a daily DMO digest. I can schedule things now with Claude Code and Claude Cowork. I say Claude a lot because I've now moved over from ChatGPT to use Claude primarily. At 6 a.m., one thing is I get rage baited pretty easily online when I'm looking at the news, right? The news is outrageous. And I want to look at things a little bit more objectively, which is hard to do because you are targeted by, social media kind of targets you based on what you interact with, right? And it knows how mad I get, and so I get all the stuff that enrages me a little bit more. And I thought maybe I could step back and have a news digest actually be delivered to me every morning about what happened the previous day. And so I gave it 10 left, 10 center, 10 right publications, and then 30 different subreddits. And it distills all that, and it shows me where the gap in sentiment is. So is the news responding to this in a way that kind of is warranted based on what happened, or is it kind of being overblown? It shows me where the differences are, left is focusing on this, right's focusing on that. And it's been a nice way to get my news without having to get my blood pressure up, because I don't need that. But I also have this daily DMO digest, so it knows what I do. It knows that I work in SEO primarily in analytics and digital marketing, and it knows that I work in tourism, and so it synthesizes all of these different articles that are posted from those resources down into a thing that matters to me, and this has been extremely helpful. I also have one about the stocks, so I have a stock market digest, and it kind of knows what kind of stocks I like, and then it shows me performance. Every day it runs at 6 in the morning so that when I log in, that's already waiting for me. I don't have to then spend time getting outraged before work. Claude Cowork got launched to the general public earlier this year, and so this is kind of how I segued into Claude Code. My advice is to just go straight to Claude Code, but this was a little bit more accessible, I think, for most people. So if you want to start building tools and doing real fun stuff, Claude Cowork is a great way to do it. But it does work in this sandboxed environment, and it creates a file structure that's a little bit hard to go back to and navigate. So I recommend just using Claude Code, but this just became available like, 2 months ago. And it's been game-changing for me. And so I think now is the time where, for me, it's gone from like, yeah, it's cool, it gives me responses, it can write some code. That code works sometimes, I have to iterate on it, it makes cool, pretty pictures, to like, I can build digital products and I can do them quick. And that just happened in the last like few months for me. Then with that, they got all the great news, and so OpenAI was like, well, we have to introduce our own version of this. This is Codex. I haven't used this one yet. It should be very similar. So if you are a ChatGPT user, Codex might be right for you. I also really love Notebook LM. Last week I was asked to do a presentation that I didn't build, and I was given almost no notice. And how do I learn that topic? I took their deck, I took a bunch of the like resources they had sent me, and I uploaded it into Notebook LM, and Notebook LM actually creates a podcast for you. So now I'm on the airplane listening to the podcast that's kind of telling me what this should be about and the sentiment of this. And that was a great way. I listened to it a couple times, and it really kind of got me in alignment with what that presentation was. Super helpful. Sometimes there's like, I don't know, academic papers that get released, and I don't want to read through 500 pages of academic work. Turn it into a podcast, and I can kind of get the gist of it while I'm driving. So this is a great tool for learning. It can make like flashcards. It can make slide decks for you. It can turn your information into a lot of like more usable formats. When you're in ChatGPT or Claude, if nobody's done this yet, you can actually set personal preferences. And I think this is important because ChatGPT loves to kind of act like you have all the best ideas in the world. They're like, oh, great idea, Justin. I don't know why I never thought about that myself. This is incredible. Like, you are magnificent. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want you to just pat me on the back. I want you to tell me I'm wrong. And so I have it's the same rules set up in both of them, but it's like, be direct and concise. Do not soften your message. Do not add disclaimers unless you are legally required to do so. If something is weak, say it's weak. If an assumption is wrong, correct it, and prioritize clarity over politeness. It's like the politeness, that's something that will fool you, right? Like, it's like, oh, that's great. You should do this. No, you probably shouldn't, but it's just always this stupid chipper tone all the time. So I recommend like writing your own rules for it, but making sure that it kind of like is set and you have some sort of guardrails and you have some sort of boundaries that you try and set for it. I also turn off the warm tone, the enthusiastic tone. I turn off all of the headers because it loves to list everything in like broken up headers and chunks, which is hard to copy and paste if I need to do that and move it to another platform. And like, I don't know why it loves emojis so much, but man, if there are not emojis in everything, so I turn that off. Actually, you can't turn it off. I can just say use less emojis. So there are, like, get into those settings and kind of tweak them for yourself because that'll help those responses be a lot more accurate. I think this is my final slide before I open up what I have in the web for you, but if you're not already taking your cybersecurity extremely seriously, like now's the time to do it. Stop whatever you're doing and start like really taking it seriously. I just watched my dad get hacked like 3 weeks ago, and it's been a nightmare for him. I watched my aunt fill out, like if you're on Facebook and there's all these personality surveys, those are used to harvest pieces of personal information about you. That's how they steal your password, because your password probably has your dog's name and your birthday after it, and they can pretty easily like come up with a few variations that get through. But now's the time to like really start, right? I can deep fake you by taking images of your face I find on Facebook and then calling your parents and freaking them out because I've copied your voice from like videos. And that is what scares me. And so that's why I'm like also starting to try and get off Gmail and some of these other platforms I know like harvest my data, start using VPNs for personal use, start using more privacy focused platforms, because just because it's not like widely happening yet doesn't mean some saboteur can't come in and like steal everybody's Wi-Fi while you're at the conference. Okay, this is the fun stuff. So this is non-professional, fun things that I've been building myself. I'm building a home lab, and so I want to learn Spanish, and I had ChatGPT basically outline a build plan for a game that works in React. That game is hosted on a Mac Mini that I have living at my computer, but I can access it from my phone here, and so I can wake up and do some Spanish lessons in the morning. It was all built by Claude Code. I want to learn a little bit more physics, so I did the same thing with physics, and I built this sleeper arc deep space game. That one's really fun. I'll kind of show you that in a second. I have a personal health tracker. It's really easy to say oh, I'm on track with my diet. I exercise enough. But until you start to quantify that and track it day to day, it's really hard to know that actually I do skip most of my healthy days and I eat burgers a lot more than I thought. So the health tracker I think has been really cool. And then one of my goals, I don't do New Year's resolutions, but I do 2026 goals because they are iterative and long term. Was to try and live a more sustainable life. And so one of the things I built was a sustainability dashboard, and it tracks, if I buy stuff, I say, yes, it uses plastic packaging. And when I throw stuff out, I track which pieces of food and how much of it I threw out. And it starts to distill out what I waste the most often. So when I go grocery shopping next, I know I only need to buy 4 apples or 4 bananas because the rest of them are gonna rot. Those avocados, I always wanna eat them. I lose about half of them. And so, again, by quantifying it, I can really start to create change. Like with compounding interest, so Einstein says compounding interest is the most powerful force in the world, or in the universe. Those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it. And that's gonna be the same with AI, right? It is one of the most profound technological changes that we've ever seen. But if you're not using it for the greater good for yourself. If you're not taking advantage of it, someone else is going to be taking advantage of you with it. And so play with it, get to know it. Don't use it for things outside of your domain, but understand it so you can take advantage of it. I think now is the time because we can build things with Claude Code. And back to the cybersecurity comment, I don't need to download an app now as a health tracker. I have it running in my own local service, in my own house. Nobody can steal that data. Start building tools for yourself that then kind of create a moat so other people can't steal your data when you're using their products. So that was the end of that. But as we were organizing this conference, we talked about building a make-believe DMO website for fun to see what we could do here. So this was a one-shot. I described the make-believe land of Candyland here. So I said, do all the research you can about Candyland, supplement that with additional information that you make up or you find online. And this is a real working website. It's hosted on my own file structure right now, but this is an HTML website. Welcome to Candyland, where every path is a rainbow and every day is sweet. Journey through peppermint forests, climb gummy mountains, lounge on ice cream shores, and celebrate at the sparkling candy castle. No maps required, just follow the colors. So if you want to meet the people of Candyland, there's little profiles on the locals. You can plan your sweet escape here. There's rules to follow the colors. I asked it to do it once, and this was the output. So it's pretty incredible what you can have built for you, right? Let's see, I showed you guys that. This is the home lab. This is my favorite of all of them, but here's the tracker. So every day I can go in and input how much I ate, how much I drank. Did I drink after 9 p.m.? Affects your sleep more. Was I on or off plan? And the other version of this I have oh no, here it is. How much biking did I do? How much exercise did I do? And then it just kind of gives me this summary of how well I'm doing with my health plan. All of these took 1 or 2 tries. I built most of these in 7 days on the couch. But the sleeper arc I think is the coolest one because we have 3D stars coming through and we're on a spaceship, and every 5 years a person gets woken up from their cryogenic pod and they have to perform a task or 3 on the spaceship. I stole this idea from the book The Children of Time, so as I was reading sci-fi I was oh, I wonder if I could turn this into a game. But It's a real game. Like you got these text is loading. This took a lot of iterations. Again, it was just me on the couch after hours. I turned the music off, but you can you wake up a sleeper, and then the sleeper has to perform tasks. And as you do these tasks, you have different systems that react to it. There's this whole mission log. You're kind of controlling the evolution of these primates that we have on board that are infected with a nanovirus that help it to evolve into a human-like creature once we get to the planet that we're looking for. It's all from this book, but I built this game on the couch in a few hours. So I guess I will wrap it up with that. Try and be creative. Think about, you're kind of probably just used to putting in a text query and getting a text response. Maybe you make an image with it. Maybe you have it summarize your emails for you. But get creative, because you can do a lot of cool stuff with it very, very fast. If it's collecting personal information and you're not an engineer, don't make this a public game, right? You probably need to still have your developers do that so that it's safe and secure. But if you're hosting it locally, there's probably not a lot that can go wrong here, right? You can build your own little tools, and that you're just collecting data on your own system. It's the same as you would be with any other file. So, I don't know, have fun with it, bring it into your lives, do a lot with it, be wary of it. Don't get misguided by it, but use it. All right, that's it. Thank you.
As you can see, we definitely got the right guy in the room, having way more fun with AI than anybody else. Are there any questions? Well, we've got Justin here before he has to run to the airport.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions? Oh.
Hi, so you mentioned keeping our data safe online. I've just been seeing so many breaches from the companies that I do business with, including the DMV, mortgage companies, insurance companies. What is the onus for these companies to protect us?
I'm not a cybersecurity specialist, and I don't think I should answer that question. I just got one from ID.me. It's like the IRS's website that said fraud was, something happened on my account and it got froze. I would say that you need to adopt more than just two-factor authentication. So if you get the text message to your phone, and that's that 2FA that you might use, that's kind of the minimum. I just bought this passkey, and it's a physical. It kind of just looks like a USB drive, and you have to have the physical key plugged into your computer in order for this giant passkey to be passed through. No one could ever guess that, and it's a physical object in your pocket. And so that's one of the things I'm doing. But in terms of their liability and what happens to them, I'm not a cybersecurity person. I'm just trying to warn you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What I noticed with ChatGPT, which I will be leaving at the end of my current project for Claude, I noticed that it was very white, straight, male-centered. And I asked it about that, and it said, well, yes, most Western literature and so forth was created by straight white guys. And I said, what can I do about that? And it gave me directions.
Oh, interesting.
On how to design it so that it gave me the information that I wanted. And so I don't know exactly what it says, but I talk about the fact that I want it from a queer perspective, that I want it to look at how it impacts BIPOC people and so forth. And it will give me the basic information, and then it says, and from a queer perspective, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes there really isn't one, because, I'm just asking for data. And sometimes it can be really different. And so I encourage people, when you're using the AI, to ask it specifically so that you know that when you are designing something for travel or whatever, that you are getting more perspectives than the one we normally get.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And that's where like a custom GPT could come into play. They're very easy to create in ChatGPT, and you can give it that context, and then you work within the custom GPT so that it's answering in the way that you're describing rather than in its base knowledge. Because you're right, it's very biased based on straight white men, basically. That's been a thing. That's like been the case since the beginning, right?
So question for you. I know OTAs are already on ChatGPT in the ads and CPC kind of space. And as a DMO, and I actually work for a small non-branded hotel, is there anything like actionable that you would recommend to have more people book directly while OTAs are already in ChatGPT?
So you're looking for like direct bookings, yeah. So it's going to be tough because those websites have more authority, they have more mentions online, right? And the more mentions you have online, the more that brand name is compressed and the more like weight is applied to that brand name in a model. I would say one thing though, like, I don't know if this answers your question exactly, but when I bring up JavaScript, it's not easily parsable by large language bots. And so if you have pricing, this might create more work for you, but at this time, this might be the fastest route to it. Create a pricing page, and you might have to update that every day because there's always rate parity, but like making an HTML page that can actually be read by bots would help for the bot to understand your pricing. Because right now, if it can't get there, it's going to go to the OTA, it's going to go to some other website. And if I can get the information from your website directly, especially if I'm asking about you, then it'll create that conduit back to your website. And so people won't click to the OTA, they can click to you. I think there's a lot behind that, right? Like there's a lot of budget, there's a lot of like media and marketing behind the OTAs, and that gives them these like very strong brands, and they thus do perform better. But the big thing we've been recommending is if you can't get your booking engines updated to pre-render, then use some sort of like hidden HTML page or link it in the footer so at least that data is available. So I don't know if that fully answers the question, but it's tricky, right? Like I'm trying to figure this out too, and it's not easy.
What are you seeing? So one of the new programs we decided to go with at our hotel is a geofencing based company as well that also utilizes AI and analytics and trends where we can basically create fences around, for example, Boise Airport. We have a geofence in so that when anybody lands there, they look up hotels. We pop right up on their feed on the web. What is your thoughts on those processes and the invasiveness of that provides right on your mobile, on your web?
That's interesting. Can you just say that? I heard most of the context, but can you ask the question just a little louder?
So we invested at our hotel. We invested in a program that uses geofencing. For example, we geofence one of the airports, so Boise Airport. So when anybody goes there and they search up hotels, we pop right up on the web.
I think that's an awesome strategy. Right now, because those people all of a sudden become so much more relevant than they would be if they were anywhere else. And so if they're right by the airport, I mean, you're just creating more relevance, right? And the more relevant something is, the more likely a person is to book. That's actually a really cool strategy.
Just to mention, there are new regulations in Oregon and Maryland that may or may not impact that strategy. But I will take. How are you doing on time, Justin?
I think we're pushing it.
All right, well, let this one be the last one, and then we can discuss the next one.
Send all your follow-ups to Wade. I'm sure he would love to answer them directly, or he can send them to me.
Is there an efficient way to retool the content on my website to be AI searchable?
Yeah, that's the other. So it likely already is. That's why we use Scrunch, and so that actually measures if you are being picked up, because if you ask it directly, it's like too anecdotal and it probably knows about you. It needs to be accessible. I would say like good SEO, like basic SEO hygiene goes a really long way into getting it picked up into the large language models. But you can look directly into your servers and hosting logs, working with log files is kind of a pain, but some of the hosting providers actually will show you if you've had successful HTTP requests against your content, and then you'll know for sure if it's actually being accessed. ChatGPT has 4 bots that they use. One of them's for training, 2 of them are for search, one of them's like agentic, and so you can see which of those is accessing your website, how often, which pages get picked up. So you can actually know for sure by looking at that. But it should be crawlable as long as it's not being blocked by JavaScript or some sort of rule, which you would have already lifted for SEO purposes. So if it's in Google, there's a high likelihood that an LLM can pick it up also. There's a lot of little parts and pieces in there, but I think mostly good SEO will help.
Well, thank you very much, Justin, for coming out.
Yeah, thanks everybody.